Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the core issues of Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. I think this is a conversation that needs to happen. I think it is best to have this communication with Creative Assembly. I think the community needs to engage constructively in order to get a better situation out of all of this. What's happened over the last couple of days is, quite frankly, amazing on many levels. Usually when there is a backlash against the developer, it's because they've done something over the last couple of days. But they didn't do anything. They released a patch a month ago. And it is delayed backlash because of that patch, but I don't think it's down to that patch or anything else that's happened. I think it's an accumulation of many issues that have just added up over and over and over again, and that's why you're seeing everything on fire. Reddit's on fire, Discord's on fire, social media's on fire, Steam reviews over the last couple of days have gone overwhelmingly negative. Soon enough, all recent reviews on Steam are going to be overwhelmingly negative. That is extraordinary from my perspective. I don't think I've quite seen this before from a developer. I really would struggle to find a similar example, but please let me know, because you never know what you may have missed. And it's one of the reasons why communication discussion is so important, because people can point out things that you do miss. For instance, on my last video, someone pointed out that one of the issues that Warhammer 3 may have could be down to Warhammer 3 having de novo, which, yes, I know Warhammer 3 has de novo, but I think it's implemented in such a way that it doesn't really cause that many issues. Best I can tell, at least from my experience, is you get starting issues with auto-saving, with loading screens, and that might be down to de novo, that might be down to the code, that might be down to the engine itself. I don't know, but it's just something to highlight as an example of why we need to have conversations and why Creative Assembly needs to engage with the community. And that's one of the important things, really, engagement. An example I can give of Blizzard doing this very well quite a few years ago, Blizzard had Ghostcrawler, and Ghostcrawler added so much to Blizzard when he was hired, back around when Wrath of the Lich King came out, because Ghostcrawler was very knowledgeable, he was very well educated, he was a very talented developer, and he was put in charge. But on top of that, Ghostcrawler communicated with players. He was very active on the forums, constantly. I know that's not a pleasant perspective for a lot of people. I work on social media, I can tell you that. Dealing with that every day is very tiring. But having someone like that, someone really talented who understands what can be done, can't be done, what are the core issues, someone with thousands of hours of development experience and experience with the game itself, playing it, knowing the ins and outs, and also having a good communication capacity would be very, very useful. So I think that's one of the core issues that I believe Creative Assembly should address going forward. But regardless if they get a person like that, and they're certainly rare enough. I mean, Ghostcrawler himself has his own problems and controversies. But someone like that is very hard to come by. But I think that's one of the things CA could really use at the moment. Someone that both communicates with the community constantly, and someone who lives and breathes Total War. Not just Warhammer 3, but Total War in general, understands what things are happening, how they're happening, what they can do, what they can do. Beyond that, what's very clear to me is that the current development team on Warhammer 3 is under-resourced, and they're also dealing with spaghetti code, decade-old code, and an engine that may or may not be struggling under the strain at the moment. I do think the engine is a lot better than people believe it is, but you're not feeling that with Warhammer 3 because it's not just Warhammer 3. It's Warhammer 1 plus Warhammer 2 plus Warhammer 3. Lots of issues we've seen over the years with that. And you can certainly feel that as a player. You can feel that if you follow what developers are talking about, when they're trying to fix things, and so on and so forth. It's not about the people that are working on it, but I do think that is difficult for them, especially if it's CA Sophia, because CA Sophia did not design the code, or didn't handle the code for Warhammer 3. So if the situation is that CA put the people in CA Sophia to deal with Warhammer 3, you can imagine the kind of situation they've been dealing with. And again, under-resourced, too few people. I have no idea how many people are currently working on Warhammer 3. It could be 20 people, it could be 30 people, it could be 100 people. No clue whatsoever. The only thing I can point to is like, a developer podcast before Forge of Cast Dwarves with Andy Hall saying that there were like 10 people working on Forge of Cast Dwarves. That was then. No clue whatsoever right now. Not rumors or speculation, don't know. But it does feel very clear that they've got too few resources to work with one way or another. And this ties into another problem, a really big one, that patches and hotfixes are coming in too slow and do feel fairly empty, undercooked, underdeveloped. It's because of a combination of issues, the code, the resources they have, and even when we do get patches, they don't necessarily fix a lot of issues. And there are issues in Warhammer 3 that have lingered for years. You can think of Beastman AI issues, how it doesn't work. Because long before Lizardman, we have had Beastmen for years in Warhammer 3. The situation with Kislev, for instance, especially with Kastaltin and Katrin after the rework, specifically after the rework. Warriors of Chaos, AI problems, all those kind of things. And on top of that, patches can create issues, like we've seen with the Lizardman situation. And what's frustrating about that is they are trying to resolve issues, but they're creating new ones, and oftentimes we feel that those issues are not resolved. For instance, you can look at Skulltaker's campaign start and his situation. You can look at Maneater. You can look at many different things. Omens of Destruction, for instance, and even Thrones of Decay do have certain issues that have never been fixed. There's a lot of different aspects to talk about, different campaigns, different Legendary Lords, all that. I'm working on a full list on that. It's obviously something that's going to take time for me to do. I'm looking to release that tomorrow morning at roughly 9 a.m. Romanian time. Right now, it's 5 p.m. as I'm recording this. Beyond that, one of the key issues is with regards to the campaign flow. A lot of the early game is where the most important decisions are made. A lot of the challenge, the tension is where it is at. But it's also the most repetitive part of a campaign. Playing that normally, as opposed to trying to push things, abusing things, it does get fairly repetitive and tedious. And then the pacing of the game is killed by roughly turn 40, and it just kind of makes every campaign kind of fall into the same soup. And that's one of the things I do believe Creative Assembly needs to improve on. This is tied to the siege issue, because siege battles are not really fun to play. As a creator, every time I show a siege, viewer numbers drop. And I'm not the only one who said that specifically. Problem is, as you play more and more through a campaign, you're going to get more sieges. You're going to get walled sieges. You're going to get minor settlement battles over and over and over again. And there's no middle ground on them. You either attack a settlement instantly to try and take it before the AI can react, or you can spend several turns building siege equipment. But more likely than not, if there is a defender army in the settlement, they're probably going to sally out on the end turn anyway. You do get a field battle, which is more interesting, but it's a very messy and annoying grind to deal with. Just a slog where you're abusing the map design, the AI design on both campaign and battle level. This is also related to the auto-resolve situation. It's just completely broken. Field battles, the most interesting ones, and the ones where if you play them manually, you actually have a lot of things to lose, because even if you win it, they can run away, and then you've lost half your army, but there's four other AI armies coming behind them. So you got to be careful, you got to be smart, or you can just auto-resolve it, use ambush tactics, etc. But they're generally easier to auto-resolve unless the AI is cheating one way or another. Faction potential plays a role in that, because faction potential is essentially an AI cheat. The results are so tied to the kind of battle difficulty that you're playing on, as opposed to the actual strength of the enemies that you're dealing with. And then on top of that, beyond the inherent problems of the auto-resolve, how it works, how it plays out, it's also overvaluing things like armor, melee stats, pushing, armies that are less diverse, less interesting to deal with. And then it punishes you for attacking settlements in auto-resolve, which again are the least interesting problems, because you can auto-resolve field battles far easier than sieges or any settlement, because settlements have an inherent auto-resolve benefit to them. So not a great dynamic, a system that just feels completely upside down to what we should be dealing with. The battles you should be forced to fight are the most interesting ones in the field battles, because in a field battle, an enemy can run away, as I said. In a siege, you win for auto-resolve or manual battle, you will annihilate the enemy. But you can severely reduce your casualty is in a siege compared to a field battle if you fight it manually. It's quite crazy, as I see it. Then we have the late game problem. So when you add auto-resolve, when you add the siege situation, the settlement situation, and the inherent problem of campaign flow, the early game versus the late game just ends up being quite broken. Because, as I said, early turn's most important, late game doesn't matter. End game crises don't really do all that much, even when you set it on the highest level. They're a slog. They're just adding to the grind. They're not resolving things. And part of that is victory conditions. Part of that is lacking a real good endgame. Part of it is actually map design. But one of the things I think adds to this is the lack of scalability with AI. Because the way the AI works is that the AI gets a certain number of cheats in the campaign, but they're the same cheats from turn 1 to turn 1,000. It doesn't matter. Unless you change the campaign difficulty, of course. But on any difficulty, AI gets a certain number of cheats. And an inverted difficulty curve is not a great thing. Inverted difficulty curve is, generally speaking, a really bad thing to deal with in any kind of game. The difficulty curve should be natural. Something that adds to the late game problem is that we can't really automate things to improve, the end-turn situation when we've got big empires. So we can't set up ideal building patterns for our settlements, like just prearrange that. It's like, okay, I'm going to build this province economically, I'm going to focus on it militarily. You could create your own ways of like, okay, I want this province, and you just click a button and it's like, okay, develop this and all that. You could set up before you even start a campaign. That would be ideal. Then we have hero leveling, lord leveling, unit recruitment, to a degree with unit recruitment. And then there's the climate situation that just limits you even further. And thus a lot of campaigns just start feeling very, very tedious as you're playing through them. On top of that, with map design, a lot of areas just feel very cramped, very flooded with legendary lords. And what ends up happening for a very long time in a campaign, dozens and dozens of turns, they waste their entire campaign potential just fighting each other on small portions of the map, never really becoming strong or not doing anything because their opponents are too strong. We've seen this again. And while you as the player, you just overcome that and you snowball in a campaign because there's no one to challenge you. So I think a smaller density of legendary lords can work well. There are certain mods that I've played with that remove legendary lords, and you might be surprised to know that just removing half the legendary lords in an area actually makes dealing with the factions in that area so much better. Like one campaign I was playing as Karl Franz rather recently, over a month ago, a month and a half, maybe two. I ended up fighting the endgame against Archeon, Vlad, and Grimgor at the same time. Let's just say that was significantly more interesting than the usual stuff I have to deal with. You do have specific areas that are worse than others. So you got Kislev, which is way too small, too many factions concentrate. Like Kislev is really a microcosm of a lot of campaign issues. You got Bretonnia, and then you have Cathay. Cathay is a good area, but you deal with the Cathayan area as any legendary lord that starts there. There's nothing that compares to how interesting it was in Cathay. So there's no room to expand because you got the sea to the east, you got the wall to the north, And to the west, yeah, you got Grimgore and Darklands, but that's roughly it. Also, every single jungle area in the game, without exception, is just not really well designed. Small provinces, messy layouts, broken pathfinding, a lot of bugs to deal with in jungles especially. Just things breaking in jungles. Lustria is the worst example of it, but it's not the only one. Finally, I would say that what Total War really could use is campaign customization. Why is that? Because campaign customization will never fix any of these inherent issues, and I do believe that these core issues do need to be resolved. But if in a game like Total War Pharaoh at launch, campaign customization made the experience significantly better, imagine what it can do to Warhammer 3, which is a significantly better game inherently for all the problems. Because campaign customization allows players to realize, okay, these are the kind of issues I'm going to deal with in campaign, like climate. Let's remove that. Oh, I want to start with every province. Everyone has high-end units from the beginning, or high-end settlements from the beginning. Or I can get a better diplomacy situation or easier confederation instead of the way it works right now, which is based more so on abusing things to get a confederation as opposed to a natural relationship that builds over time. There's many other things like vassalization, diplomacy, allegiance system, and so on and so forth. But broadly speaking, these are the core issues. Again, I'll be releasing a video, I'll try to release a video and a whole list of issues as I see them. But this is just my perspective, and I think that this is a conversation that community needs to have. It's a conversation that CA needs to have with the community if it's going to go anywhere. That's where I stand. Questine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. As a final note, the events over the last couple of days, I did not want things to go down this path. I don't think anyone wanted it. Not Legend, not CA, not the community. But here we are. And now we're left to try and pick up the pieces. That's my perspective. Stay tuned.